Steelers Nation. You are now listening to Good Steelers Morning, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Steelers news, rumors, and everything black and gold. Now, here is your host, Justin Ottstadt.
This morning, I wanted to get into the quarterback room for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the upcoming 2024 season. That being Justin Fields and Russell Wilson being the two biggest names in that locker room, being the two guys that everybody is discussing, everybody is talking about. And I wanted to give my thoughts on both quarterbacks and what they could potentially bring to the Steelers in 2024. But for us to do that, we got to look back at what they did last season, and then we'll get into some pros and cons for each player. And of course, I'll give you guys my thoughts on who should be starting. Although it is very obvious, and I'll get this out the way, Mike Tomlin made it clear that Russell Wilson is going to be the starting quarterback come September. But let's go ahead and get into it, man. Justin Fields, 2023. We all know the situation with him in regards to how it went in Chicago. Didn't play out, didn't pan out, which is why he was traded to the Steelers and traded for basically, as LaShawn McCoy put it, a bag of chips. Passing yards, let's get into it, man. 2,562, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He had a completion percentage of 61.4%, yards per attempt 6.9, and a passer rating of 86.3. In the rushing department, 124 attempts, 657 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, and he was getting about 5.3 yards per carry. And when you look at that, obviously the thing that stands out there is his rushing ability, but we'll get into that shortly. Moving over to Russell Wilson's 2023 stats in the passing department, he had 3,070 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a completion percentage of 66.4%, yards per attempt 6.9, and a passer rating of 98. In the rushing department, he had 80 attempts, 341 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, and a 4.3 yard per carry average. And so, yeah, in comparison, in that regard, Fields definitely has him beat a little bit there. And so those are the stats if you want to look and compare the two in that department, which we're not going to. We're going to get into some more in-depth things in regards to each player, and then I'll give you guys my final thoughts on who I would make the starting quarterback for the 2024 campaign. Starting off with Justin Fields, we're going to look at his mobility. Fields is an exceptional dual threat quarterback, as you guys know, and he demonstrated that, as I said, with those 657 rushing yards in 2023. Something the Steelers could definitely use, and I do think it'll be a part of the offense, whether or not Fields is starting. I think they're going to find a way to get him involved regardless. His ability to extend plays and gain yards on the ground can add a certain dynamic element to the Steelers' offense, and that new offensive line, if it's as good as we are hoping it is, that is something that we could see work out in the Steelers' favor tremendously. Another aspect that I want to focus on here is, and it's kind of obvious, Fields is still young. He still has a little bit of development time, and that window hasn't closed by any means. He's 24 years old. He has significant room for growth. He has the athleticism and a strong arm that suggests he still has a high ceiling regardless of what people think. The negatives, consistency and decision-making. That is one of the biggest things that stands out with Fields in regards to negativity, man. One of his biggest weaknesses. Completing 61.4% of his passes in 2023 with those 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And those numbers do show a little bit of promise, but they also indicate areas for improvement in regards to his accuracy, and especially his decision-making when he's under pressure. Of course, we know that he had protection issues in Chicago, being sacked 44 times in 2023. I don't know if that says more about Fields or Chicago's offensive line, but I'm going to be interested to see if Fields does get the opportunity to start and the Steelers' offensive line, which we all agree looks improved on paper here in the offseason. If those two things happen this season, and it could, a lot of people didn't think Mason Rudolph was going to get a chance in 2023. And we saw he not only got the Steelers to the playoffs, but he played in the playoffs. And yeah, it didn't work out. But the point is, at this point in time in May, everyone is thinking the same thing I am. Russell Wilson's going to be the guy because Tomlin said so. But we don't know what could happen. And so, yeah, the protection issues in Chicago, were they because of the offensive line, or is it because of his issues dealing with pressure from the defense? Is it kind of like what Kenny Pickett was, running out of the pocket when it wasn't necessary? And so that's something that we can look forward to if the opportunity shows itself. Switching over to Russell Wilson, one of the biggest things that stands out about Wilson is, of course, the experience. He has that veteran presence. He has the Super Bowl experience. He has the over a decade, I should say, in the NFL. He has leadership, and he understands the game much better than anyone else in the quarterback room this season. The other aspect to Russell's game that is very nice is the efficiency. Wilson had those 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions with a passer rating of 98%, which I know some people don't really care about, but we still have to mention that. He has the ability to protect the football and make smart decisions, and that's going to benefit the Steelers. That is what's been missing since Big Ben had left. Even though Ben made mistakes himself, the point is, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on Kenny Pickett because, let's be honest, that train is gone. But Kenny Pickett, those were some of the things that we suffered from last season and the year before that. Although we gave him a little bit of headroom because of him being so young and being the rookie. But these are areas that Wilson's going to come in and hopefully, I mean, I don't want to sound so certain here because he is getting up there in age, but there's no way in hell this man's going to come in here and play worse or even close to what Kenny Pickett did. And so that alone is an improvement. But let's look at some of the negatives here. He is getting much older, so the mobility probably isn't going to be what it used to be, sitting at that 341 yards last season. But I could see him still being able to produce in that department. 35 years old, I mean, Father Time doesn't wait for anybody. And so those are kind of obvious, but those are the pros and cons to Russell Wilson. And there's really not much bad to say. I know everything didn't work out the way they were supposed to in Denver, but I do think Wilson has something in the tank that he's going to be able to bring here in Pittsburgh. And so who do I think the Steelers should go with in 2024? I think it's pretty simple. The Steelers seem as if they're in win now mode. That is the feeling that I am getting. That is the feeling I think most of you are getting. Let me know down in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. It's win now. The way they're building this roster, the things that they're doing, the coaching staff, everything that they seem to be pointing towards is win now. And so Justin Fields is obviously the much longer solution at the quarterback position, but we don't know what they're going to do with him in the long term. As of right now, he's going into this season under his rookie contract. He did not get the 5th year picked up. And the Steelers are going to have to resign him to a long-term contract if they do indeed want to keep him around. Otherwise, he's going to walk and go into free agency, and the Steelers could be potentially needing to go after quarterback again. Unless Russell Wilson produces and they find another way to get him another short-term contract, I don't know if that's the right move, though. And so that's my answer, man. I think Russell Wilson's the starter, and I think Justin Fields has to be the guy you consider for the long term. But ladies and gentlemen, that is today's episode of Good Steelers Morning. I wanted to let you guys know that Wednesday, actually, the NFL schedule comes out Thursday morning. We're going to look it over. We're going to break it down and get into the 2024 Steelers schedule. But I'm Justin Ottstott. This is Good Steelers Morning. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.